Imagine living in a world where chaos and order constantly pull at you. How can you navigate this duality and find meaning in your life? Jordan Peterson, a clinical psychologist, offers a set of principles that promise not just to improve your life, but also help you cope with the inevitable suffering and chaos it brings. In the 12 Rules for Life, Peterson merges psychology, philosophy, and mythology to propose practical rules for living a balanced, fulfilling life. Rule 1. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. The story begins with an unexpected lesson from nature: lobsters. Yes, lobsters, those ancient creatures crawling along the ocean floor, unknowingly teach us something vital about how to live our lives. In the world of lobsters, as strange as it might sound, the fight for dominance and status is fierce. When two lobsters meet, they size each other up and, if necessary, engage in a battle. The lobster that stands tall, flexes its claws, and exudes confidence usually wins, sending the loser scurrying away to hide. This behavior isn't just limited to lobsters. It reflects a truth that runs deep in all social animals, including us humans. When we stand up straight, chest out, and shoulders back, we signal to the world that we are confident, capable, and ready to take on the challenges life throws at us. Peterson uses this powerful analogy to introduce his first rule: stand up straight with your shoulders back. It sounds deceptively simple, but it goes beyond physical posture. It's a metaphor for how we should carry ourselves in life, mentally and emotionally. Life, as Peterson describes it, is filled with hierarchies, at work, in social situations, and even within families. Just like in the world of lobsters, humans often find themselves in dominance battles, whether they're aware of it or not. And here's the twist: your posture and how you present yourself play a huge role in determining where you fit in these hierarchies. Imagine yourself walking into a room full of people. If you slump your shoulders, avoid eye contact, and look down, what message are you sending? You're signaling to others that you're not a threat, that you're submissive, and that you don't see yourself as someone of value. Conversely, standing tall and holding your head high tells a very different story. It says you are someone who has value, someone who deserves respect. Peterson explains how this isn't just a superficial trick to impress others. It has real consequences for how you feel about yourself and how you interact with the world. Standing tall triggers changes in your brain's chemistry. Serotonin, a neurotransmitter associated with feelings of well-being and happiness, increases when you present yourself confidently. It's not just about pretending to be confident, it's about training your body and mind to actually feel it. Let's consider the ripple effects. When you stand tall, your mind shifts. You start to feel more capable, more ready to face challenges. You begin to take on more responsibility, which leads to real, tangible changes in your life. You might take that promotion at work, or face a difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Over time, these small victories build on one another, creating a positive feedback loop that reinforces your confidence and sense of self-worth. Standing up straight is not just a way to look good, it's a way to take control of your life. But the opposite is also true. When you consistently allow yourself to slouch, to shrink, both literally and metaphorically, you start to feel weaker. Your brain notices. Your serotonin levels drop, making you feel anxious, depressed, or less capable. When you feel small, you act small, and soon, the world starts to treat you that way. Peterson weaves in stories from his clinical practice to illustrate how this rule applies in everyday life. He describes patients who have been beaten down by life, who carry themselves as if they've already lost the battle. They've become trapped in a cycle of defeat, reinforcing their own low status with every slumped shoulder and downcast glance. But the transformation, he argues, can begin with something as simple as changing their posture. Standing tall opens the door to other changes, mentally and emotionally. It sets the stage for taking action, for asserting oneself, for moving forward. But let's pause here. This isn't just about individual well-being. Peterson reminds us that standing tall is also an act of social responsibility. When you present yourself as capable and confident, you inspire others. You show them that it's possible to stand up against the chaos and suffering that life inevitably brings. It's a small but powerful act of defiance against the forces that seek to drag you down. By standing up straight, you're telling the world that you are ready to carry the burden of existence, and in doing so, you encourage others to do the same. This first rule lays the foundation for everything that follows. It's not just about posture, it's about attitude. It's about how you approach life, how you interact with the world, and how you see yourself. By standing up straight, you're taking the first step towards reclaiming your power and responsibility. You're stepping into the role of someone who is ready to face the world with courage and strength. Rule 2. Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. As we move deeper into the wisdom of the 12 rules for life, Peterson asks a question that is both simple and profound. Why do we take better care of others than we do of ourselves? It's a puzzling aspect of human nature. If you were to ask someone to care for their pet, their child, or a loved one, most would go out of their way to ensure they were well-fed, healthy, and safe. Yet when it comes to our own well-being, many of us fall short. We neglect our health, make poor choices, and allow ourselves to suffer in ways we would never tolerate for someone we care about. This contradiction forms the heart of the second rule. Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. Imagine for a moment that you have a beloved dog. If that dog became sick, you wouldn't hesitate to take it to the vet, give it the proper medication, and follow all the necessary steps to ensure its recovery. You wouldn't blame the dog for being ill, nor would you neglect its needs out of laziness or frustration. Instead, you'd act with care, empathy, and responsibility. Now, Peterson asks, why don't we extend that same level of care to ourselves? This rule is about recognizing your inherent worth and treating yourself as someone deserving of love, care, and responsibility. In Peterson's view, many people suffer from a lack of self-respect. They treat themselves poorly because deep down they don't believe they are worth the effort. They see themselves as flawed, inadequate, or unworthy, and this belief manifests in their actions, or lack thereof. But Peterson urges us to challenge this perspective. He wants us to take a step back and ask, if I were responsible for someone else's well-being, would I treat them the way I treat myself? Let's delve into why this happens. Peterson touches on an ancient and deeply ingrained belief in human sinfulness and imperfection. From religious traditions to modern psychology, there is a recognition that humans are flawed. We make mistakes, we fail, and sometimes we carry the weight of our failures like a heavy burden, believing we don't deserve kindness or care. We punish ourselves for our shortcomings, neglecting to see that we are just as deserving of help and compassion as anyone else. But Peterson doesn't leave us in this state of self-criticism. He reminds us that we are all a work in progress. Just as we would show patience and understanding to a friend or loved one going through a tough time, we need to extend that same grace to ourselves. You are responsible for your own well-being, and that responsibility includes taking care of your physical and mental health, setting boundaries, and making choices that benefit your long-term happiness. Think about the small everyday decisions you make. Do you get enough sleep? Do you eat nutritious food? Do you take time to rest and recharge? These basic aspects of self-care are often overlooked because we're too busy, too distracted, or too caught up in taking care of others. But Peterson's rule challenges us to prioritize ourselves. It's not about being selfish or self-indulgent. It's about recognizing that you are your own caregiver. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. Peterson also delves into the psychological roots of self-sabotage. Many people, he observes, actively undermine their own success and well-being. This might manifest as procrastination, addiction, or a refusal to take responsibility for their own lives. It's as if they are at war with themselves, constantly making choices that go against their best interests. But why? Peterson suggests that part of the problem lies in our inability to see ourselves as valuable. We often think that taking care of ourselves is indulgent or unnecessary, but this mindset is deeply flawed. Treating yourself as someone you are responsible for helping requires a shift in perspective. It means acknowledging your weaknesses and imperfections without letting them define you. It means being compassionate toward yourself when you fail, just as you would be toward someone else. And most importantly, it means taking action to improve your life, even when it's hard. Here's an important point Peterson makes. You can't fix everything all at once, and that's okay. Just as you wouldn't expect a sick friend to recover overnight, you shouldn't expect immediate perfection from yourself. Start small. Focus on one area of your life where you can make a positive change. Maybe it's committing to a healthier diet, setting a regular bedtime, or finally addressing that lingering health issue you've been ignoring. Whatever it is, approach it with the same care and attention you would give to someone you love. This rule also extends to mental health. In his clinical practice, Peterson has seen countless individuals who are trapped in cycles of anxiety, depression, or self-doubt. They beat themselves up for their struggles, believing they should be able to snap out of it or handle things on their own. But Peterson reminds us that just as we would seek help for a friend in need, we must seek help for ourselves. This might mean going to therapy, asking for support from loved ones, or simply being kinder to ourselves when things aren't going well. As we move through this journey, Peterson also highlights the importance of responsibility. It's not enough to simply wish for a better life. You must take ownership of your actions and choices. No one else is going to do it for you. Just as you would take responsibility for the well-being of a loved one, you must take responsibility for your own well-being. This doesn't mean you won't face challenges or setbacks. Those are inevitable. But by treating yourself with care and respect, you can navigate those challenges with greater resilience and strength. Ultimately, this rule is about self-respect. It's about recognizing that you matter, that your health and happiness are worth the effort. It's about breaking the cycle of self-neglect and self-sabotage and replacing it with a mindset of care, responsibility, and action. When you start treating yourself like someone you are responsible for helping, everything else begins to fall into place. You make better decisions, you take better care of yourself, and you build a foundation of strength that allows you to take on life's challenges with greater confidence. And so, with this second rule, Peterson lays down a challenge. Look at yourself as you would look at someone you love. Take responsibility for your own well-being. Start small, but start now. Because the better you take care of yourself, the better equipped you are to take care of others and navigate the complexities of life. Rule 3. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Imagine for a moment that you are surrounded by people who pull you down, who belittle your efforts, or who seem to be trapped in cycles of negativity and self-destruction. How does it make you feel? Now picture yourself in the company of people who celebrate your victories, support you in times of need, and inspire you to reach for your goals. The contrast is stark, isn't it? In this chapter, Jordan Peterson turns his attention to the importance of the people you surround yourself with. The third rule is, make friends with people who want the best for you. And it may sound obvious at first, but its implications are far-reaching. Peterson is pointing out something we often overlook. The people we choose to spend time with have a profound impact on our behavior, mindset, and overall life trajectory. He begins by describing what happens when you allow negative or toxic people into your life. These are the people who drain your energy, who thrive on chaos, and who, whether consciously or unconsciously, pull you into their downward spiral. They are the friends who may not want you to succeed, who may be threatened by your growth, or who don't believe in your potential. Peterson isn't saying these people are inherently bad, but he's highlighting a crucial truth. Their influence on your life can be damaging. Imagine a scenario where you've set your sights on a new goal. Maybe it's losing weight, starting a business, or simply adopting a healthier lifestyle. You're motivated, full of hope, and ready to make a change. But then, you meet with a friend who constantly questions your decision, subtly undermines your progress, or tells you it's not worth the effort. Over time, this negativity starts to seep into your thoughts, and before you know it, you begin to doubt yourself. You start to wonder if it's really possible to achieve your goals, or worse, if it's even worth trying. Peterson's point is that the people we allow into our inner circle can either uplift us or drag us down. We are deeply social creatures, and as much as we like to believe we are independent, we are influenced by those around us. This rule is a call to be mindful of those influences and to actively seek out people who bring out the best in us. But this isn't just about avoiding negative people. It's also about surrounding yourself with those who genuinely want to see you succeed, who will celebrate your victories and stand by your side through your struggles. These are the friends who push you to grow, who challenge you to be better, and who aren't afraid to tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Peterson weaves in stories from his own life and clinical practice, showing how friendship can either be a source of growth or a source of stagnation. He recalls friends from his past who were caught in destructive patterns, whether it was substance abuse, chronic procrastination, or simply a refusal to take responsibility for their lives. These individuals, though perhaps not malicious, acted as anchors, keeping him from moving forward. It wasn't until he distanced himself from these relationships that he was able to make real progress in his own life. This doesn't mean you should abandon friends who are struggling. Peterson is careful to distinguish between those who are genuinely trying to improve and those who are stuck in self-destructive loops without any desire to change. It's one thing to support a friend who is going through a rough patch but is actively working to improve their situation. It's another to continue investing in a relationship with someone who consistently pulls you into their chaos without any intention of changing. Peterson is also clear about the difficulty of this rule. It's not easy to walk away from toxic friendships, especially when you've invested years into those relationships. But he reminds us that staying in these situations not only harms your own progress, but can also prevent your friend from confronting the consequences of their actions. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is to walk away, allowing that person to face their own problems and, hopefully, find their own path to growth. This rule challenges us to evaluate our friendships honestly. Are the people in your life helping you grow, or are they keeping you stuck? Are they supportive of your dreams, or do they subtly discourage you from pursuing them? These are tough questions to ask, but they are necessary if you want to live a life of purpose and fulfillment. Peterson also touches on the idea of reciprocity in relationships. True friendships are built on mutual respect, support, and a shared desire for each other's well-being. It's not enough to simply surround yourself with people who want the best for you. You must also be someone who wants the best for others. This requires a willingness to put aside jealousy, resentment, or competition, and to truly celebrate your friends' successes as if they were your own. In the end, this rule is about building a community of people who uplift and inspire each other. It's about recognizing that the company you keep has a significant impact on the person you become. By choosing friends who want the best for you, and by being that kind of friend in return, you create an environment where growth, success, and happiness can flourish. Peterson concludes with a reminder. Life is hard enough without the added burden of toxic relationships. Surround yourself with people who lift you up, who challenge you to be better, and who are there to support you when you need it. These are the relationships that will help you navigate the inevitable difficulties of life and come out stronger on the other side. Rule 4. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Imagine waking up every day and being bombarded with images of other people's perfect lives, flawless success stories, beautifully curated moments of happiness, and achievements that seem impossible to reach. It's the reality of the modern world, where social media allows us to peer into everyone else's lives, but only the parts they want us to see. In this constantly connected world, it's all too easy to compare yourself to others and feel like you're falling short. Jordan Peterson's fourth rule is both a powerful antidote to this problem and a profound piece of wisdom for personal growth. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. This rule is about freeing yourself from the prison of comparison and focusing instead on your own progress. It's a reminder that the only person you should be competing with is yourself. Peterson opens this chapter with a simple but challenging truth. No matter how good you are at something, there will always be someone better. You could be a world-class pianist, but there will always be someone who can play faster or with more emotion. You could be a brilliant scientist, but someone will always make a bigger breakthrough. This realization can be discouraging, especially if your self-worth is tied to being the best or achieving external markers of success. But Peterson argues that this mindset is a trap, one that leads only to frustration and despair. Instead of measuring yourself against others, Peterson encourages us to turn inward. The question isn't, am I better than others? But, am I better than I was yesterday? This shift in perspective is transformative. When you focus on your own growth, no matter how small, you reclaim control over your life. You are no longer at the mercy of external comparisons, which are often unfair and incomplete. You set your own goals, measure your own progress, and take pride in your own achievements. To illustrate this point, Peterson shares a story from his clinical practice. One of his patients, a young man, was struggling with feelings of inadequacy. He constantly compared himself to his more successful peers and found himself coming up short. No matter how hard he worked, it never seemed to be enough. His friends were making more money, getting better jobs, and living more exciting lives. This young man was trapped in a cycle of self-doubt, always measuring himself against others, and always feeling like he wasn't good enough. Peterson's advice to him was simple but profound. Stop comparing yourself to your friends. Instead, ask yourself what small step you can take today to be better than you were yesterday. It might be something as simple as making your bed, getting to work on time, or completing a task you've been avoiding. The key is to focus on small, manageable improvements that build up over time. And as the young man began to follow this advice, he started to notice a change. He wasn't obsessing over his friends' achievements anymore. Instead, he was focused on his own progress, and that gave him a sense of purpose and accomplishment. Peterson expands on this idea by discussing the concept of incremental improvement. He emphasizes that personal growth is a slow and steady process, one that happens day by day, decision by decision. It's easy to get discouraged when you don't see immediate results, but the truth is that real change happens over time. If you can make just one small improvement today, if you can be even a little bit better than you were yesterday, you're on the right path. But this isn't just about productivity or self-discipline. It's also about being kind to yourself. Peterson points out that many people are far too harsh on themselves. They set impossible standards and then berate themselves when they don't live up to them. This kind of self-criticism is not only unproductive, it's destructive. Instead of tearing yourself down, Peterson encourages you to acknowledge your progress, no matter how small, and to celebrate your efforts. It's about treating yourself with the same compassion you would offer to a friend. This rule also touches on the importance of setting realistic goals. If you set goals that are too lofty or too vague, you're setting yourself up for failure. Instead, Peterson advises breaking your goals down into manageable steps. For example, if your goal is to get in shape, don't start by trying to run a marathon. Start by going for a walk every day. If your goal is to write a book, don't expect to write 10,000 words in a day. Start with 500 words. The idea is to set yourself up for success by creating achievable milestones that you can build on over time. Peterson also dives into the idea that we are each on our own unique path. The problem with comparing yourself to others is that you're comparing your full life, with all its complexities, to someone else's highlight reel. You don't see their struggles, their doubts, or their failures. You only see their successes, and that gives you a distorted view of reality. Everyone's journey is different, and the challenges you face are unique to your life. The only fair comparison is with yourself, because only you know where you've been and where you're trying to go. This rule is particularly powerful in the context of personal development because it shifts the focus from external validation to internal growth. Instead of chasing after someone else's definition of success, you define success on your own terms. You become the author of your own story, and that gives you the freedom to live authentically and pursue goals that are meaningful to you. By the end of this chapter, Peterson leaves us with a sense of hope and empowerment. The world may be full of people who seem more successful, more talented, or more accomplished, but that's not what matters. What matters is that you are doing your best to grow, to improve, and to be a little bit better than you were yesterday. That's the only comparison worth making, and it's the only one that can lead to true fulfillment. In this way, Peterson challenges us to let go of the unhealthy comparisons that rob us of our happiness. Instead, he invites us to embark on a journey of personal growth, one step at a time, one day at a time. And as we focus on our own progress, we find that the competition with others fades away, replaced by a deeper sense of purpose and self-respect. Rule 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Raising children is one of the most important and challenging responsibilities a person can have. Yet many parents today struggle with setting boundaries, enforcing rules, and guiding their children through the difficult process of growing up. It's easy to be overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of parenting, especially when society places so much emphasis on letting children express themselves freely. But Jordan Peterson's 5th rule offers a counterintuitive yet vital piece of advice. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. At first glance, this rule might seem harsh. After all, shouldn't parents love their children unconditionally, no matter how they behave? Peterson's answer is yes, of course, but unconditional love doesn't mean letting bad behavior slide. This rule is not about being overly strict or controlling. It's about recognizing the long-term consequences of allowing children to behave in ways that are harmful to themselves and others. Peterson starts by pointing out an uncomfortable truth. No one likes badly behaved children, not even their parents. A child who throws tantrums, ignores rules, or acts out in public is difficult to manage, and these behaviors often lead to resentment from the people around them. This resentment isn't just limited to strangers. It can affect the parent-child relationship as well. If you consistently allow your child to act in ways that frustrate or embarrass you, you may find yourself developing negative feelings toward them, even if you don't want to admit it. This rule, then, is about setting boundaries and teaching your children how to navigate the world in a way that fosters respect and responsibility. Peterson argues that children need discipline, not just for the sake of obedience, but because it helps them learn how to function in society. Without rules, children grow up thinking that the world revolves around them, that they can do whatever they want without facing consequences. This attitude not only makes them difficult to be around, it sets them up for failure later in life. Peterson recalls stories from his clinical practice where he encountered children who were completely out of control, rude, defiant, and destructive. These children were often the product of parents who believed that setting limits would stifle their creativity or harm their self-esteem. But the opposite was true. Without boundaries, these children had no idea how to interact with others in a respectful, productive way. They hadn't learned how to regulate their own emotions or take responsibility for their actions, and as a result, they were isolated, unhappy, and misunderstood. But Peterson's rule is not about being authoritarian or cruel. He emphasizes that children need to be guided with both firmness and compassion. Parents must teach their children the rules of life, but they must also explain the reasons behind those rules. This helps children understand that discipline is not about punishment. It's about preparing them for the real world. The key is to strike a balance between love and structure. One of the most powerful points Peterson makes is that discipline is a form of care. When you set boundaries for your children, you are showing them that you care enough to help them grow into competent, well-adjusted adults. If you ignore bad behavior, you are essentially telling your child that you don't believe they are capable of doing better. Discipline, then, becomes a way of empowering your child to rise to the challenges of life. Peterson also addresses the fear many parents have of being too strict. In today's world, there is a strong emphasis on positive reinforcement and gentle parenting, which focuses on validating children's emotions and encouraging their independence. While Peterson agrees that children need encouragement and emotional support, he warns against the dangers of permissiveness. Children are not naturally equipped to make the best decisions for themselves. They need guidance. If parents are too afraid to set limits, they risk raising children who are ill-prepared for the realities of life. He provides practical examples of how this rule plays out in everyday life. Imagine, for instance, that your child refuses to go to bed on time, even though you've repeatedly told them it's important to get enough sleep. If you allow this behavior to continue unchecked, you are teaching your child that they don't have to listen to you, that their whims are more important than their health. Over time, this kind of permissiveness can lead to larger issues, such as a lack of respect for authority, poor self-discipline, and an inability to follow rules at school or work. On the other hand, if you enforce the bedtime rule consistently, explaining to your child why sleep is important and making it clear that this is not negotiable, you are teaching them valuable life lessons. You are teaching them that actions have consequences, that there are reasons for rules, and that their well-being is something worth protecting. Peterson also delves into the broader societal implications of this rule. When parents fail to discipline their children, they are not just harming their own family dynamic, they are contributing to a larger problem. A society full of undisciplined, self-centered individuals is one that cannot function properly. Rules and boundaries exist not to oppress individuals, but to ensure that people can live together harmoniously. By teaching your children how to follow rules, you are helping to create a more stable and just society. One of the most striking ideas Peterson introduces in this chapter is the notion that parents must be willing to confront the difficult aspects of parenting. It's easier to give in to a child's demands than to stand firm, especially when they are throwing a tantrum or pushing back against authority. But in the long run, giving in teaches the child that persistence and manipulation are effective ways to get what they want. This may work when they are young, but as they grow older, they will face much harsher consequences for their actions if they don't learn how to respect boundaries. Peterson reminds us that parenting is a long-term investment. The effort you put into setting boundaries and enforcing rules today will pay off in the future when your child is able to navigate the world with confidence and self-control. It's not about being perfect. Every parent makes mistakes, but it's about being consistent and intentional in your approach. At the heart of this rule is the idea that discipline is a form of love. When you set limits for your children, you are teaching them how to be responsible, respectful, and capable individuals. You are showing them that you believe in their potential and that you care enough to guide them through the challenges of growing up. And perhaps most importantly, you are helping them become the kind of people that others, including yourself, will want to be around. In the end, Peterson's fifth rule is a call to action for parents. Don't shy away from the difficult task of discipline. Don't let your children engage in behavior that makes you dislike them, because if you do, you are not only harming your relationship with them, but you are also failing to prepare them for the complexities of adult life. Love your children enough to teach them the rules of the world, and in doing so, you will help them thrive. Rule 6. Set your house in perfect order. Before you criticize the world. Imagine a person who is constantly railing against the injustices of the world. They point out the flaws in the political system, the failures of institutions, the greed of corporations, and the unfairness of life in general. Every conversation they have is filled with complaints and grievances, and they are quick to point out what others should be doing to make things better. But when you take a closer look at their own life, you find chaos, a messy home, neglected relationships, financial irresponsibility, and a lack of personal discipline. This is the scenario that Jordan Peterson addresses in his sixth rule. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. This rule is about personal accountability and responsibility. Peterson's message is clear. Before you go about trying to change the world or criticize the actions of others, take a long, hard look at your own life. Is everything in order? Are you doing everything you can to live responsibly and ethically? It's easy to point fingers at others and blame external forces for your problems, but it's much harder to take ownership of your own actions and make the necessary changes in your own life. Peterson begins by acknowledging that life is full of suffering. Terrible things happen to good people, and the world can often seem like a cruel and unjust place. In the face of such suffering, it's natural to feel angry, bitter, or resentful. It's natural to want to point out the flaws in the world and demand that things be different. But Peterson cautions against falling into the trap of blaming the world for all of your problems. He argues that before you can effectively address the problems of the world, you need to make sure you've dealt with the problems in your own life. This doesn't mean that you need to have a perfect life or that you can never speak out about injustice. Rather, it means that personal responsibility should come first. If your own life is in chaos, if you're not managing your relationships, your finances, your health, or your responsibilities, then how can you expect to make meaningful change in the world? How can you criticize others when you're not holding yourself to the same standard? Peterson uses the metaphor of a house to illustrate this idea. Your house represents your personal life, the things you have control over, such as your actions, your choices, and your responsibilities. If your house is in disarray, if there are things you're neglecting or avoiding, then you need to address those issues before turning your attention to the larger world. It's not about being selfish or ignoring societal problems. It's about recognizing that meaningful change starts at home, with you. One of the key concepts in this chapter is the idea that small, incremental improvements can lead to profound change. Peterson suggests starting with the things you can control, no matter how small they may seem. Maybe it's cleaning up your living space, organizing your finances, repairing a damaged relationship, or addressing a bad habit. By taking responsibility for these aspects of your life, you begin to build a foundation of order and stability. This, in turn, gives you the strength and clarity to take on larger challenges. Peterson also touches on the idea of moral responsibility. When you fail to take care of your own life, you are shirking your responsibility not only to yourself, but also to those around you. Your actions have a ripple effect on the people in your life, and when you live in chaos, you contribute to the overall disorder of the world. By setting your house in order, you not only improve your own life, but also make a positive contribution to the world around you. The story of Cain and Abel from the Bible is central to Peterson's exploration of this rule. In the story, Cain becomes envious of his brother Abel, whose offerings to God are accepted while Cain's are not. Instead of taking responsibility for his own shortcomings and improving himself, Cain becomes bitter and resentful. He directs his anger outward, ultimately murdering his brother. Peterson uses this story to illustrate the dangers of resentment and the consequences of failing to take responsibility for one's own actions. Like Cain, many people choose to focus their anger and frustration on external forces, blaming others for their misfortunes instead of looking inward. This mindset can lead to destructive behavior, both for the individual and for society as a whole. Peterson argues that the path to a better life and a better world begins with taking responsibility for your own actions and setting your own life in order. Peterson acknowledges that this is no easy task. Life is filled with challenges, and there are often external factors beyond our control. But he emphasizes that even in the face of overwhelming hardship, there are still things you can control. You may not be able to change the larger circumstances of your life, but you can always make small, meaningful improvements in your own sphere of influence. And it is these small acts of responsibility and order that pave the way for larger change. One of the most powerful aspects of this rule is its emphasis on personal empowerment. When you focus on setting your own house in order, you take control of your life. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming an agent of change. Instead of feeling helpless or overwhelmed by the problems of the world, you focus on what you can do to improve your own situation. This shift in perspective can be incredibly liberating, as it allows you to take ownership of your life and your future. Peterson also addresses the moral dimension of this rule. By taking responsibility for your own life, you become a model for others. You show the people around you that it is possible to live with integrity, order, and purpose, even in the face of difficulty. This, in turn, inspires others to do the same, creating a ripple effect of positive change. When you set your house in order, you not only improve your own life, but also contribute to the betterment of your community and, ultimately, the world. At the end of this chapter, Peterson leaves us with a challenge. Before you criticize the world or blame others for your problems, take a hard look at your own life. Are there things you could improve? Are there areas where you are not taking responsibility? Start there. Set your own house in order, and in doing so, you will not only improve your own life, but also become a force for good in the world. Peterson's sixth rule is a call to personal responsibility and accountability. It's about recognizing that while the world may be imperfect, the most effective way to create change is to start with yourself. By taking ownership of your life and setting your own house in order, you lay the foundation for a more meaningful and purposeful existence. And, in turn, you become better equipped to contribute to the larger task of improving the world around you. We notice that 72% of you who listen to our video are not yet subscribed to the channel. Please help support the channel by hitting the subscribe button and like the video. Thanks for inspiring us to create more content for you. Rule 7. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Life is full of choices, and with each decision we make, we are faced with a fundamental question. Do we pursue what brings us immediate pleasure and relief, or do we aim for something deeper and more meaningful, even if it requires sacrifice? Jordan Peterson's seventh rule, pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient, delves into this age-old dilemma and challenges us to prioritize long-term fulfillment over short-term gratification. Peterson begins this chapter by exploring the concept of expediency, doing what is convenient or brings quick results, regardless of the long-term consequences. Expediency is tempting. It promises immediate rewards, whether it's the satisfaction of procrastinating on a difficult task, indulging in unhealthy habits, or avoiding responsibility. In the short term, expediency can feel good. It provides instant relief from the discomforts of life. But Peterson warns that expediency is a trap. While it may offer temporary pleasure, it often leads to deeper dissatisfaction, regret, and chaos. The pursuit of meaning, on the other hand, is a more difficult but ultimately more rewarding path. Meaning requires sacrifice, discipline, and responsibility. It asks us to forgo short-term pleasures in favor of long-term goals. It requires us to confront the difficulties of life head-on, rather than avoiding them. But in doing so, it gives us a sense of purpose and fulfillment that far outweighs the fleeting satisfaction of expediency. Peterson draws on religious and mythological stories to illustrate the importance of sacrifice in the pursuit of meaning. He discusses the story of Cain and Abel again, focusing on the idea that Abel's sacrifices were accepted by God because they were made with the intention of creating something greater. Abel understood that by sacrificing in the present, by working hard, delaying gratification, and making the right choices, he could create a better future. Cain, on the other hand, chose the path of expediency. He wanted immediate rewards, and when he didn't receive them, he became resentful and angry, leading to his downfall. This story, Peterson argues, is a metaphor for the choices we all face in life. Will we follow the path of Abel, sacrificing the present for the sake of a meaningful future, or will we follow the path of Cain, seeking immediate gratification and becoming bitter when things don't go our way? The choice we make determines the course of our lives. Peterson explains that meaning comes from responsibility. When you take on responsibility, whether it's for your family, your work, or your own personal growth, you create a structure in your life that gives you a sense of purpose. This responsibility anchors you in the world, giving your actions significance and direction. It's not always easy, and it often requires sacrifice, but it is the pursuit of meaning that leads to a fulfilling life. Consider, for example, the responsibility of raising children. Raising a child is one of the most demanding and self-sacrificial tasks a person can undertake. It requires years of dedication, patience, and hard work, often at the expense of personal freedom and convenience. But it is also one of the most meaningful things a person can do. The act of caring for another human being, of shaping and guiding them as they grow, creates a profound sense of purpose and connection. The same principle applies to other areas of life. Whether it's committing to a career, pursuing a creative passion, or working to improve your health, the things that bring meaning often require effort and sacrifice. They are not easy, but they are worth it. Peterson also emphasizes that meaning is not something that can be found passively. It must be actively pursued. It's not enough to sit back and wait for life to become meaningful. You must take action, set goals, and work towards something greater than yourself. This may mean taking on more responsibility, facing uncomfortable truths, or making difficult choices. But in doing so, you will create a life that is rich with meaning and purpose. A key aspect of this pursuit is facing the inevitable suffering that life brings. Peterson is very clear about the fact that life is hard. There's no way to avoid pain, loss, or hardship. But he argues that meaning is what allows us to endure suffering. When you are pursuing something meaningful, you can bear the difficulties of life with greater resilience. Meaning gives you a reason to keep going, even when things are tough. Peterson uses the example of Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, to illustrate this point. Frankl's experiences in the concentration camps taught him that even in the most horrific circumstances, people who had a sense of meaning and purpose were able to endure far better than those who did not. Frankl's famous quote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how," encapsulates this idea. Meaning gives us the strength to face life's inevitable suffering and to emerge stronger on the other side. This chapter also addresses the dangers of nihilism, the belief that life has no meaning. Peterson argues that when people lose their sense of meaning, they become susceptible to despair, bitterness, and destructive behaviors. Nihilism is the ultimate expression of expediency because it denies the possibility of long-term fulfillment and focuses solely on the avoidance of pain. But nihilism, Peterson warns, is a dead end. It offers no real solutions to the challenges of life and leaves people adrift in a sea of meaninglessness. Instead of succumbing to nihilism, Peterson encourages us to seek meaning in the responsibilities and challenges we face. By taking on responsibility, by sacrificing immediate pleasures for the sake of something greater, we can build a life that is not only bearable but also deeply fulfilling. Meaning is what makes life worth living, and it is found in the act of striving towards something greater than ourselves. Peterson also addresses the question of how to find meaning in a practical sense. He suggests that meaning can be found in the pursuit of noble goals, goals that contribute to the well-being of others or to the improvement of the world. Whether it's working to create a better future for your children, dedicating yourself to a meaningful career, or contributing to your community, the pursuit of noble goals gives life a sense of purpose. However, Peterson is careful to point out that meaning is not always found in grand, world-changing acts. It can also be found in the small, everyday responsibilities we take on. Cleaning your room, helping a friend, or doing your job to the best of your ability, all of these actions can be infused with meaning if they are done with the intention of contributing to something greater. In the end, Peterson's seventh rule is a call to prioritize the pursuit of meaning over the pursuit of expediency. It is a reminder that the easy path, the one that offers immediate gratification, is rarely the most fulfilling. Instead, true satisfaction comes from taking on responsibility, facing challenges, and striving toward meaningful goals. This is not the easiest path, but it is the one that leads to a life of purpose and fulfillment. As Peterson concludes, the choice is yours. Will you pursue what is expedient, or will you pursue what is meaningful? The path you choose will determine the course of your life. And while the pursuit of meaning may be difficult, it is ultimately the only path that leads to a life of lasting satisfaction and purpose. Rule 8. Tell the truth, or at least, don't lie. Imagine living in a world where nothing is certain, where the truth is distorted or hidden, and where deception is the norm. Such a world is full of chaos, distrust, and suffering. In Rule 8, Jordan Peterson delves into the concept of truth and why telling the truth, or at least not lying, is crucial not only for your own well-being, but also for the stability of society. Telling the truth, Peterson argues, is not just about avoiding lies. It is about being honest with yourself and others, even when the truth is painful or difficult to express. This rule may seem simple, but its implications are profound. When you speak the truth, you bring order and clarity to the world. When you lie, you contribute to chaos and deception, both in your own life and in the lives of those around you. Peterson begins by explaining that lies are corrosive. They might provide temporary relief or allow us to avoid uncomfortable situations, but over time, lies accumulate and create a web of deceit that is difficult to escape. Each lie builds upon the last, distorting reality and making it harder to tell what is true and what is false. The longer you live in this web of lies, the more disconnected you become from reality, and the harder it becomes to confront the truth. This disconnection from reality has serious consequences. Peterson argues that when we lie, especially to ourselves, we begin to lose touch with who we truly are. We start to build a false image of ourselves and the world around us, which ultimately leads to suffering. You might lie to avoid conflict or to maintain a certain image, but in doing so, you are creating a version of yourself that is not based in reality. Over time, this false version of yourself becomes harder to maintain, and the lies you've told start to catch up with you. One of the most important points Peterson makes in this chapter is that telling the truth is not always easy. In fact, it's often incredibly difficult. The truth can be painful, both for you and for others. It can force you to confront uncomfortable realities about yourself, your relationships, or your situation in life. But despite its difficulty, the truth is necessary for growth, healing, and genuine connection with others. Peterson uses examples from his clinical practice to illustrate the consequences of living in a world of lies. He describes patients who have built their lives on falsehoods, whether it's a marriage built on denial, a career sustained by deception, or personal habits that are hidden from the outside world. In each case, the lies have created a fragile foundation that eventually crumbles, leading to crisis. It is only when these individuals confront the truth, painful as it may be, that they can begin to rebuild their lives on a more stable and honest foundation. But what does it mean to tell the truth? Peterson explains that it's not just about avoiding blatant falsehoods. It's also about being honest with yourself about your desires, motivations, and flaws. Many people live in a state of denial, avoiding difficult truths because they are afraid of the consequences. They might deny that they are unhappy in their relationships, that their career isn't fulfilling, or that their habits are destructive. But by avoiding these truths, they trap themselves in a life that isn't authentic. Telling the truth requires courage. It requires you to look at yourself honestly and acknowledge your shortcomings. It also requires you to speak openly with others, even when the truth is uncomfortable or unwelcome. This can be particularly difficult in relationships, where honesty may lead to conflict or hurt feelings. But Peterson argues that honesty is the only way to build real trust and intimacy. Without truth, relationships are built on a foundation of deception, and eventually, that foundation will collapse. One of the central ideas in this chapter is that the truth brings order to chaos. When you tell the truth, you are aligning yourself with reality. You are acknowledging the world as it is, rather than as you wish it to be. This act of alignment brings a sense of clarity and stability, both to your own life and to the world around you. When people tell the truth, they create a shared reality that allows for genuine communication, cooperation, and progress. Peterson also discusses the concept of white lies, those small, seemingly harmless lies we tell to avoid hurting others or causing conflict. While these lies may seem innocuous, Peterson warns that they are still dangerous. Even small lies distort reality and create a slippery slope toward larger deceptions. By telling white lies, you are still avoiding the truth, and in doing so, you are contributing to the overall chaos of the world. In contrast, when you tell the truth, even in difficult situations, you create the possibility for real change. Imagine, for example, that you are unhappy in your job, but you tell yourself and others that everything is fine. By doing so, you are avoiding the reality of the situation and preventing yourself from making the changes necessary to improve your life. But if you are honest about your dissatisfaction, you can begin to take steps to address the problem. whether it's finding a new job, improving your current situation, or reevaluating your career goals. Peterson emphasizes that telling the truth is not a one-time act, but a continuous practice. It requires vigilance and self-awareness. You must constantly check in with yourself and ask, am I being honest? Am I avoiding difficult truths? Am I telling myself a story that isn't based in reality? This process of self-reflection is essential for personal growth and integrity. Peterson also discusses the consequences of collective lies, situations where entire groups, societies, or institutions operate on falsehoods. History is full of examples of how lies at a societal level can lead to disaster, whether it's corrupt governments, oppressive regimes, or toxic cultures. When leaders lie, when institutions deceive, they create environments of mistrust, fear, and chaos. The truth, Peterson argues, is the only antidote to this kind of widespread corruption. In the end, Peterson's 8th rule is a call to embrace honesty, both with yourself and with others. It's a reminder that while lies may offer temporary relief, they ultimately lead to suffering and disorder. Telling the truth is not always easy, but it is necessary for building a life of integrity, trust, and stability. By aligning yourself with the truth, you bring order to your own life and contribute to the overall well-being of the world. This chapter leaves us with a powerful question. Are you living in alignment with the truth, or are you hiding behind lies? The answer to this question determines the kind of life you will lead. Will it be a life grounded in reality, with all its challenges and rewards, or a life built on falsehoods that will eventually crumble under their own weight? The choice, as always, is yours. Rule 9. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. Imagine a conversation where instead of waiting for your turn to speak, you truly listen, not just to respond, but to understand. This is what Jordan Peterson calls us to do in his 9th rule. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. This rule is about humility, openness, and the willingness to learn from others, even when you think you know more or have a stronger opinion. It's a lesson in the power of listening, the art of conversation, and the value of learning from every person you meet. Peterson opens by exploring the nature of conversation and how it is often misused. Many people approach conversations as a battleground for ideas, where the goal is not to understand, but to win. We see this all the time in debates, arguments, and even casual discussions, where one person is more interested in proving their point than in genuinely engaging with the other person's perspective. This type of communication, Peterson argues, is counterproductive. It closes off the possibility of learning, growth, and meaningful connection. The key to avoiding this trap, according to Peterson, is to approach every conversation with the assumption that the other person has something valuable to offer. No matter how much you know or how convinced you are of your own viewpoint, there is always something to learn from others. Every person you meet has experiences, knowledge, and perspectives that you don't, and if you are willing to listen with an open mind, you can gain insights that will help you grow. Peterson draws on the work of Carl Rogers, a renowned psychologist who emphasized the importance of listening in human relationships. Rogers believed that truly understanding another person requires a deep, empathetic listening where you are fully present and focused on what the other person is saying. This type of listening, Peterson explains, is not about preparing your next argument or trying to fix the other person's problem. It's about giving them the space to express themselves fully, without judgment or interruption. When you listen in this way, something remarkable happens. The person you are speaking with feels heard and understood, which creates a sense of trust and openness. This, in turn, allows for deeper, more meaningful conversations. It also opens the door for you to learn something new about the other person, about the world, or even about yourself. One of the most common barriers to truly listening is the belief that you already know everything you need to know. This mindset, Peterson argues, is both arrogant and limiting. When you assume that you have all the answers, you close yourself off to the possibility of learning from others. But the truth is that no one has all the answers. No matter how knowledgeable or experienced you are, there is always more to learn. And often, the most valuable lessons come from unexpected sources. People who, on the surface, may not seem to have much to offer, but who carry wisdom that can surprise and enlighten you. Peterson illustrates this point with stories from his clinical practice. He describes patients who, at first glance, seem to be lost, broken, or lacking in insight. But when he listened carefully to their stories, he often discovered deep truths about human nature, suffering, and resilience. These patients, through their experiences and struggles, had developed a profound understanding of life that Peterson could learn from, even though he was the expert in the room. This humility, the willingness to learn from others, is what makes conversations a powerful tool for growth. But listening isn't just about gaining new information. It's also about fostering connection. Peterson explains that when you listen carefully to someone, you are validating their existence. You are showing them that their thoughts, feelings, and experiences matter. This creates a bond of trust and mutual respect, which is the foundation of any meaningful relationship, whether it's between friends, family members, colleagues, or even strangers. This rule also touches on the importance of dialogue in a broader societal context. In a world where people are increasingly polarized, where conversations are often reduced to shouting matches or echo chambers, the ability to listen to others with respect and openness is more important than ever. Peterson argues that society cannot function properly if people are unwilling to engage in genuine dialogue with those who hold different views. By assuming that others might know something you don't, you create the possibility for understanding, compromise, and progress. Peterson also explores the psychological benefits of listening. When you truly listen to someone else, you are not only learning from them, but you are also clarifying your own thoughts and beliefs. This is because conversation is not just about exchanging information. It's about organizing and refining your own ideas. When you articulate your thoughts in response to what someone else is saying, you are forced to think more clearly and critically about your own position. This process of clarification is essential for personal growth and intellectual development. Furthermore, Peterson explains that listening can be a form of problem solving. Often people come to us with problems not because they need advice, but because they need to talk through their thoughts and feelings in order to make sense of them. By listening carefully, you can help them organize their thoughts and find solutions on their own. This type of listening requires patience and restraint. It means resisting the urge to jump in with your own advice or opinions, and instead allowing the other person the space to work through their own process. Peterson also warns against the dangers of superficial listening. Many people listen only at a surface level, nodding along while they mentally prepare their next response. This type of listening is not really listening at all, it's just waiting for your turn to speak. Superficial listening prevents genuine understanding and leaves both parties feeling disconnected. To truly listen, you must be fully present, focused, and engaged in what the other person is saying, without distractions or preconceived judgments. One of the most profound insights in this chapter is the idea that listening is an act of humility. It requires you to acknowledge that you don't know everything, that you have something to learn from others, and that your perspective is not the only valid one. This humility is essential for personal growth because it allows you to remain open to new ideas, new experiences, and new ways of thinking. When you listen with an open mind, you are constantly learning and evolving rather than staying stuck in your own limited worldview. As Peterson concludes this chapter, he leaves us with a challenge. The next time you are in a conversation, try to listen with the assumption that the other person knows something you don't. Approach the conversation with curiosity, openness, and humility. You might be surprised by what you learn, not just about the other person, but about yourself as well. In the end, this rule is about more than just listening. It's about cultivating a mindset of continuous learning, growth, and connection. It's about recognizing that every person you meet has something valuable to offer, and that by truly listening to them, you can gain insights that will enrich your own life. This type of listening is rare in today's fast-paced, distracted world, but it is also one of the most powerful tools for building meaningful relationships, fostering understanding, and growing as a person. Rule 10. Be precise in your speech. In life, clarity is power. Think about the times when vague communication has led to misunderstandings, frustration, or unnecessary conflict. Jordan Peterson's 10th rule, be precise in your speech, addresses the importance of clear and accurate communication, not just with others, but with yourself as well. This rule is about taking control of your words, which in turn helps you take control of your reality. Peterson begins by exploring the consequences of imprecise language. When we speak in vague or unclear terms, we not only confuse the people we are talking to, but we also create confusion in our own minds. This vagueness leaves room for misunderstanding, which can easily spiral into conflict or resentment. On the other hand, when we are precise in our speech, when we clearly define what we mean and what we want, we reduce the likelihood of misunderstanding and pave the way for constructive dialogue and action. This rule isn't just about being articulate or speaking well. It goes deeper than that. Peterson argues that being precise in your speech forces you to confront the reality of your situation, to bring clarity to the things that are ambiguous or uncertain in your life. Many people avoid being precise because it requires them to face uncomfortable truths. It's easier to speak in generalities, to skirt around difficult topics, or to ignore problems altogether. But this avoidance only leads to more chaos. Imagine, for example, that you are unhappy in your relationship. You might say something vague like, "Things just aren't working," or "I don't feel good about this." While these statements may be true, they are not precise. They don't pinpoint the specific issues that are causing your dissatisfaction, which means they can't lead to any meaningful resolution. On the other hand, if you are precise in your speech, if you say, "I feel neglected when you spend all your time at work," or "I need more support with the household responsibilities," you are clearly defining the problem. This precision gives both you and your partner a concrete issue to address, which opens the door for problem solving and improvement. Peterson explains that being precise in your speech is also a way of bringing order to the chaos of life. Life is full of complexity, ambiguity, and uncertainty. If you allow that chaos to remain undefined and unchecked, it will overwhelm you. But when you use precise language, you begin to impose structure on that chaos. You identify the problems, name them, and begin the process of resolving them. This, Peterson argues, is how you take control of your life, by clearly defining what needs to be done and then taking action. A key aspect of this rule is the idea that words shape reality. The way you talk about something influences how you perceive it and how others perceive it. If you describe a problem in vague or unclear terms, you are effectively avoiding it, allowing it to remain nebulous and unresolved. But when you use precise language, you bring the problem into focus. You name it, you confront it, and you create the possibility for change. This is why precision in speech is so important, not just for communication, but for personal growth and progress. Peterson also touches on the idea that imprecise speech can be a form of dishonesty. When we avoid being clear about what we mean, we are often trying to avoid conflict, discomfort, or responsibility. We might say something vague to avoid hurting someone's feelings, or we might downplay a problem to avoid dealing with it. But this lack of precision is ultimately a form of self-deception. It allows us to avoid facing the truth, which in turn prevents us from making meaningful progress. Being precise in your speech, therefore, requires courage. It requires you to face difficult truths, to define your problems clearly, and to take responsibility for addressing them. It means being honest with yourself and with others, even when that honesty is uncomfortable. But it is only through this kind of precision that you can create real change in your life. Peterson gives practical examples of how this rule plays out in everyday life. He describes situations where people avoid being precise because they don't want to confront the full reality of their situation. For instance, someone who is unhappy with their job might say, "I just don't like it here," without specifying what exactly they don't like. Is it the work itself, the hours, the coworkers, the lack of opportunity for growth? By failing to be precise, they prevent themselves from identifying the real problem, which means they can't take meaningful steps to fix it. But if they were to articulate the specific issues, I'm frustrated by the lack of recognition for my work, or I feel like my skills are being underutilized, they would have a clearer understanding of the problem and a better chance of finding a solution. Peterson also explains that being precise in your speech is crucial in relationships. Many conflicts in relationships arise not from actual disagreements, but from misunderstandings. When people are vague or unclear in their communication, they leave room for misinterpretation. One person might think the other is upset for one reason, when in reality it's something completely different. This lack of clarity can lead to unnecessary conflict, resentment, and frustration. But when both parties are precise in their speech, when they clearly articulate their feelings, needs, and concerns, they can resolve issues more effectively and build stronger, healthier relationships. Another important aspect of this rule is its application to personal goals and ambitions.